today looking at why 2025 might be the worst possible time to start your retirement. I'm Stephen Neely, certified financial planner and founder of Fortress Capital Advisors. Over the years, I've helped quite a few retirees navigate the transition into retirement, and I've seen firsthand what works and what doesn't work. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is retiring just because you've hit a certain age. Many people think that just because they've hit some arbitrary age, like 62 or 65, it's time to stop working. But a lot of retirees later come to regret that decision, and not just because they didn't have enough money to retire. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, why following traditional retirement timing could be a costly mistake and what you should consider instead before making that decision. So let's get right into the video. So what I tend to find is that most people, when they decide they want to retire, it's usually because they've reached a certain age. In my experience, a lot of the times that ends up being 60, maybe 65 or 67, but for some reason in their minds, it's just like, okay, this is the age, and they haven't really put any other thought into around why that specific age, but it's like, we're going to get it done now. Usually there's two main reasons for this. One, they're super burned out at their job and they just pick an age like 65 and it's like, okay, I can make it till Medicare and then I'm out. The other reason, and this one's going to be the focus of our video today, is societal pressure to stop working completely once you're at some point in your 60s. The problem with the latter is that retiring for this reason often leads to regret for people, especially for those people who actually enjoy their work and get a lot of fulfillment out of it. I'll give you guys a story of a client that we have back when I was out in Arizona. And this person, he was a real sharp guy. He was an engineer and he retired. I think it was either like 65 or 66. And it was just one of those things where it was like, okay, well, I'm in the mid 60s. I've got plenty of money. I'm just going to retire. And there really wasn't a lot of thought beyond that. And this ended up being a pretty big mistake for him. So he ends up staying home. There's only so much golf that you can play. And so he doesn't enjoy it to the extent that he wants to be out on the golf course 8 hours a day. So he ends up being just bored out of his mind. He starts doing all these like busy work renovations around the house, and it's just driving his wife nuts. So they start fighting all the time, and she's literally coming to us behind his back complaining. It was just a terrible situation for both of them. Eventually, within, I think it was like less than 2 years, it might have even just been a year, he actually went back to his company. They let him come back on full time, and he just continued working along, and he really had no retirement age set in his mind after that. And it ended up being a really good thing for him. Now, I'm sure this probably surprised you because you've heard everywhere that retirement is always the best option when you hit that maybe mid 60s range. So if you're concerned that it might not be the path for you or want to talk about some alternatives, click the first link in the description where you can complete a 2-minute questionnaire and receive a completely personalized video from me where I'll run through your exact situation. Now let's get back into the video and talk about some of these retirement age misconceptions that lead to poor decisions. So when I prepped for this, there were 4 that came to the top of my mind, and we're going to start with the first one, which is you must retire as soon as you are financially able to do so. Here's the thing, guys. Just because you can retire doesn't mean you should. Those who enjoy their work really have no reason to retire unless there's some sort of mandatory retirement age at their jobs. It was super easy for me to think of examples of famous people who still worked well into their 90s. So, you've got Warren Buffett, he's 94. He's still the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. You've got Charlie Munger, his partner, who I think died last year, but he was still working up until age 99. You think of Henry Kissinger, who died at age 100. He was still writing books at that time. And Clint Eastwood is a great example. He's still directing movies, and he's 94 years of age. The commonality with all of these people is rather than retiring, they took a balanced approach. All of them kind of slowed down and they stopped doing the things that they didn't want to do. I know with Warren Buffett, for example, he started delegating a lot more to his eventual successors. And all of these guys, they pretty much only took on the projects that they wanted to take on, and they didn't deal with any of the BS they didn't like dealing with anymore. And they had the financial means to do that. So this is a great example of a balanced approach that I think a lot more people would be wise to consider. The example that I'm going to talk about later in the video is from a recent client that I've got, and we took this kind of balanced approach to his retirement. I'll get to that here in the latter part of the video. But for now, let's go to retirement misconception number 2, and that's working longer means that you've failed at retirement. So I'll give you guys an example here of another client. She's a doctor. She loves her career and she gets a lot of satisfaction out of helping patients. She was in the fortunate position where she was able to slow down and keep doing this part-time. But the problem with her is she kept getting comments from coworkers like, "Oh, why are you still working?" And she started to kind of feel judged, that people were thinking that she wasn't maybe good with money or something, and that there was some reason why she had to keep working, even though, most people at that age were retired. And she started second guessing her decision to stay working just because of this kind of social pressure. But look, the idea that working longer is a failure assumes that retirement is always better than work, and that's just not always the case. I told you about the other client we had in Arizona earlier. For a lot of people, work provides meaning, you've got structure, and the most important thing is the social connections, and retirement isn't just going to automatically replace these. All right, so let's go to the third misconception, and that's a successful retirement means stopping work completely, right? We've already kind of touched on this. Many retirees assume that stopping work completely is the goal. But like I said, for a lot of people, that can be a mistake. Something that more people should be considering is a phased retirement or part-time work that can kind of provide the best of both worlds. As I said, here in a little bit, I'm going to give you guys the example of what we decided to do with another client, where he's sort of taking this best of the both worlds approach. All right. And the fourth misconception is retirement means that you will be happy. A lot of people realize way too late that happiness wasn't about not working necessarily. It was really about, doing something more meaningful. Most people just assume that retirement automatically is going to bring happiness. But studies show that happiness really comes from engagement, purpose, and challenge, not just freedom from work. If you don't have any of those things lined up for your retirement, you might be miserable. That was exactly what happened with the client I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Now, ultimately, here's what could happen if you do fall victim to some of these beliefs, right? You could end up leaving a fulfilling career prematurely. You might miss out on opportunities for purpose and engagement, and thereby create a retirement void that money alone just can't fill. And I think worse, maybe, is that you might actually be speeding up cognitive decline. According to researchers at Binghamton University, decreased mental and social activities post-retirement contribute to worsening cognitive skills. That study emphasizes the importance of social engagement and mental activity in maintaining cognitive function during retirement. So the key here is really not, you just have to keep working to be happy. It's really that if you don't have a mechanism in place for after retirement to maintain some type of social engagement and mental activity, you could really be setting yourself up for poor outcomes. So as you can see, it's not uncommon to feel forced into retirement, but a pressure-based retirement is never the right answer. So to help you, if you feel like you're in a situation like this, let's look at how I helped a client navigate this problem. So I've got a client just recently came to me. He's in his early 60s and he reached out to me for a retirement plan. And in our discussion, about working with me, he actually asked me, well, what happens if you retire? Which, by the way, is kind of funny because I'm quite a lot younger than he is. But, I told him, well, listen, I actually don't intend to ever retire, despite retirement planning being my big thing. I literally love what I do, and I can't think of any reason, unless there's some type of cognitive decline, why I would retire. I might slow down, I might stop taking on new clients and so on, but why would I quit doing something that I really love? And it's funny because it's a light bulb moment for him where he's just like, yeah, that's why I've just kept working all these years. I mean, honestly, this guy has several $1 million, not a big spender. Retirement isn't going to be the issue. He's going to be just fine there. It ended up being that he continues working because he loves it, but he's feeling this pressure like, hey, I'm reaching the middle of my 60s here soon. I just need to retire. And it's exactly like what we've talked about earlier in the video. And it turns out he was really struggling with the idea of completely stopping work. And he's at a loss of what he's going to do. I mean, he literally mentioned that. He's just like, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do to occupy my time when I retire. And that's when we completely pivot our conversation to, you don't need to actually retire. We can completely adjust your plan around you continuing to work. So this kind of completely transformed the plan. And instead of focusing on retirement age, we come up with all these other aspects to focus on for the retirement plan. So that's okay. What do you really care about? The money's not necessarily an issue. So, let's make sure your money's doing what you want. So, we still have to optimize for Social Security. His wife, she has a much lower earning base. So there's a lot of ways that we can optimize Social Security. So, hey, let's take care of that. Make sure you're maximizing income. Otherwise, it's okay. Turns out these guys are really charitable. So what can we do in that regard? So what we're going to do, hey, you're still going to work. Cool, no problem. Well, how can we kind of maximize charity? You don't have a mortgage, so you typically wouldn't be in a position to itemize, but we can bunch your charitable deductions. We can put 2 years in one, so we can do it every other year. That way you get over the threshold for charitable deduction. So we kind of maximize your tax write-off for that. And thereby that's more money that you can give to charity or leave for legacy. Also, what we can do, we can start taking qualified charitable distributions from your retirement accounts. That way you can lower your RMDs later, lower MDs, lower taxes, and thereby you can leave more of a legacy to your daughters. Set up a plan for funding, college for grandkids, and the big thing that he wanted to do is spend money on experiences for them. He can do all of that because they've got the money and we don't have to worry about retiring just to achieve those things. We just have to structure your assets so that you have the most net after tax for legacy and charitable giving. Where the rubber really meets the road is the transition from him now working full time until what comes next. So what we decided is he's going to continue working along full time. The projects that he's working on right now, he really loves. He happens to be a researcher in the pharmaceutical industry. And so he's like, look, I'm just going to keep carrying on until we get to the point where I'm no longer interested in these projects. The good thing for him is that his company, they allow researchers to take on a senior research fellow role. And then he can continue along. Once he's done working his full-time job, and maybe he's kind of had it with that, he can transition to the senior research fellow. You don't have to work full-time doing that. And then what you do is you work a reduced workload, and then you continue mentoring junior scientists, and you can guide research strategy. So it's a fantastic solution for him. And he could keep doing this, who knows, maybe into his 90s. So, it was great seeing that, it kind of opened his eyes to other possibilities that aren't necessarily retiring and could still create this happy lifestyle for him. Now, to wrap it up, I hope you guys now see that retirement doesn't have to be an all or nothing decision, and it definitely doesn't have to be about picking some arbitrary age to retire. It's really about finding the right balance between, financial security and personal fulfillment and maybe even flexibility. That might mean continuing part-time work. Maybe it's consulting, or maybe like the client example, it's transitioning into a role that keeps you engaged, but while also giving you more freedom. Whatever it is, the goal is to design a retirement that actually works for you. And that's exactly why I put together a complimentary retirement questionnaire to help you determine where you stand. Once you fill it out, I'll send you a personalized video with actionable insights that are going to be tailored to your situation. Just click the link below to get started. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.